You know, AutoZone is great at helping their customers.
True. From free battery charging to Loan-A-Tool, they help people get in the zone.
I was thinking, what if they also helped us send 4 listeners to the ESPYs?
Greeny, that's exactly what they're doing. It's the Mike and Mike experience at the ESPYs presented by AutoZone. Folks just have to listen and watch us from April 20th through May 15th. All the details are at espnradio.com/Mike's SB contest.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It's called The Zone. AutoZone's going to help you get there.
National League Central rivals go head-to-head this weekend when the Pirates face the Cubs at Wrigley.
Swing and a miss. He stuck him out.
The pregame at 3 Eastern, first pitch at 4. Saturday on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast on ESPNRadio.com. The Best of Mike and Mike.
Hey, it's Golick. Thanks for checking out the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Here's what we've got for you from Friday. Reaction to Deflategate and Brady's comments with Jim Gray and Tom Brady's agent, Don Yee. Also, A-Rod reaches 661. Buster talks about the implications.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Start with Brady this morning. Was busy yesterday.
Yeah, I think Jim Gray will be happy coming on with us and being on the guy getting asked the questions. And because how many have it in their mind, him standing there talking to Pete Rose? I mean, going back to the different interviews
LeBron?
That he has done that were at times uncomfortable. This one last night, this was like the presidential State of the Union, you know, and he walks out and he's shaking hands with everybody, and after every sentence, there are cheers, standing O's, the whole deal. That was last night. That's what went on when Jim Gray was doing exactly what he should have done. Tom Brady was doing exactly what I thought he would do, and the fans in Salem, Massachusetts were doing exactly what you expected them to do, wildly cheer Tom Brady for every answer he gave.
Well, ironic that in Salem the people think that this is a witch hunt by the NFL going after Tom Brady, and let the record show I just ad-libbed that. But anyway, all right, let's hear, for those of you who didn't get to hear it, Salem State University last night, Jim Gray sitting down with Tom Brady. First and most important, Brady is not prepared to respond to any of the, if you want to call them allegations. I mean, what Ted Wells ultimately found was that he probably knew what was going on, that something happened, and Brady probably knew about it. So I don't even know if those are theoretically allegations. Whatever they are, they are. It's not really an accusation.
Did you probably know, Tom?
Yeah, he probably knew that something probably happened.
Right.
There's at least a 51% chance that something happened, and of that 51% chance, there's a 51% chance that Brady knew about it.
Which in a civil case will make you pay.
Perhaps. And my math adds up to 102% chance he's guilty.
Oh, boy.
But obviously my math is not so good.
Yeah.
Okay, all kidding aside, Brady sitting there, he's not ready to talk about it yet.
I don't have really any reaction. Our owner commented on it yesterday, and it's only been 30 hours, so I haven't had much time to digest it fully, but when I do, I'll be sure to let you know how I feel about it.
It's interesting that he said it that way because his agent blasted it. So the only reason I was expecting Brady to say something a little more defiant or defensive in the sense of defending himself was because his agent came out and did so forcefully.
That was one of the things I was expecting. I did not expect Tom to bring up his agent at all.
Not to bring up the agent.
No, not to bring up. You know what was, you know, he talked about Robert Kraft. He didn't say Robert Kraft and my agent. He just said Robert Kraft because I think if he said his agent, that's where I thought Jim may go. Well, your agent has come out with a statement just destroying this. Are you in complete agreement with your agent? You know, as a question, I thought that was coming because his agent, obviously, you know, his agent and Tom talk, and the agent came out with just a scathing statement about the Wells report and about how inaccurate it is, and there's already been obviously the opinion on the agent and being wrong in some places where I agree he's wrong in some places, but that's his opinion. You got to believe the one thing you want is him and Tom on the same wavelength.
Well, look, I mean, as I've said many times, on some level, this is all a big game, right? What we're ultimately talking about is taking a little air out of a football. We're not talking about a really serious matter here. So I feel fully comfortable describing all of this as being part of one large game. And Don Yee, the agent for Tom Brady, has his part to play in that game.
Sure does.
Your part, if you're the agent of Tom Brady, is to come out and attack the report and defend your client vigorously. And that's what he did. Even if one of the things he said is blatantly and obviously wrong.
Yeah.
Tim Hasselbeck just blew it up on the air yesterday, and we'll play that for you.
And Tim was right.
But Tim was right, and the agent is wrong. The agent probably knows he's wrong.
Yeah.
But his job is to do exactly what he did
yesterday. Throw it all out
yesterday.
there. Throw it all up against the wall. It will be interesting the tact that goes forward, because while you say it is just a game, and I'm with you on the meaning of this, but the bottom line is you're starting to see more and more people talk about multiple game suspension. That ain't no game.
No.
That's some serious stuff. So
there is money involved in that.
Yeah.
There is obviously a team's season involved in that. There's Brady's legacy involved in that. Those things aren't a game, but they aren't of enormous consequence to the rest of the world.
No, they are not.
But here's what I will say is that perhaps the logical reason why he's not saying anything at all right now, Brady, is because he's waiting to see what the league does.
Absolutely right.
I'm about to say gets off here, but whatever the word is, if he comes out of this with a hefty fine, a stern letter, and no suspension, I think he smiles and walks away and just sort of leaves it be. If he gets suspended for 8 games, you're hearing some reports in some quarters that they're contemplating suspending him for the season, which would floor me. But if something like that were to happen, some really significant suspension, maybe any suspension,
I think any suspension
were to happen,
he appeals.
He fights it like crazy.
And here's the thing. I think it'll be more than a fine, but I'll go back and talk about that. We're talking about a legacy here. Tom Brady has said he knew nothing about this and didn't do it. If a fine comes out and he just says, I'm going to accept it, people are going to say, well, you're guilty because you're accepting it.
Yeah, so, but I think he'll live with that.
I don't know if he will. I do not know.
Well, here's the thing.
Brady
in an
will.
appeal, now he may be forced to answer more questions.
I know, but
if he just says, listen, for everyone's best interest, the best interest of everybody and the Patriots and everyone else is to put this chapter behind us. I'll close the book on this. I continue to maintain my innocence.
If that's the way he goes about it, of still saying, I didn't do anything, but I don't want this to carry on, so I'll pay it, that may be his way around it. But I do not think he is just going to accept something without still reiterating he thinks he had nothing or saying he had nothing to do with it. I think he cares about that long term. I do. But I do think a suspension is coming, so I think we're going to be past that. I think he'll appeal it. The union will get involved, and then we'll go from there.
We're Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Last year, over 3 million drivers switched to Progressive. Call or click today. Find out if you could save. All right, let's hear the big one. You'll hear Jim Gray's question, and this is about whether or not the Super Bowl is tainted. Bear in mind, for those who have either forgotten or weren't following it closely at the time, all this happens surrounding and following the AFC Championship game. And for those wondering, why wouldn't Brady have just said, all right, you know what? You got me. I didn't realize this was such a big deal, and try and put it behind him immediately, which probably would have worked. But certainly would have not made it this big deal.
But there'd have been a price to pay.
He could potentially have gotten suspended for the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
So that lends the question, if he does wind up getting suspended for this, will people look back on the Super Bowl and say, you know what, he really shouldn't have played in that game? That's the question that Jim Gray asked last night.
Has this, however, detracted from your joy of winning the Super Bowl?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Because we earned and achieved everything that we got this year as a team, and I'm very proud of that, and our fans should be too.
Is the Super Bowl tainted? Should there be a test for this?
What do you guys think? Either do I.
Your answer was?
Either do I.
No, it's not. Is that what you're saying?
I said, I asked what they thought.
I asked you what you thought.
I said, no, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Good to have a home crowd on your side.
Look, I mean, Jim's doing what he can. He's got to get him on record as not just agreeing with the crowd cheering.
Exactly right, yeah.
Let the record show that Patriot Ray, our producer, and Ray Netchie, while that was playing, just opened up his microphone to my ear and said, he's a hero.
Yeah.
That's what it said. I can't even do a show while this is going on because Ray is constantly arguing with me.
Oh, my God.
He's having a one-way argument in my head.
This is
the only person on planet Earth who can hear him is me.
Yeah, Ray needs his own show right now. Nobody will
but he's. I mean, he should have been in the crowd last night at Salem State.
There were a bunch of Rays in the crowd last night, but that's expected. Listen, that's how it works. You know, as we'll get to, you got a guy in New York getting cheered for what he does, but outside of New York, he's not. You got a guy in Salem or in, New England or in Boston who's going to get cheered for what he's done. Outside of that, he's getting crushed everywhere.
And I think that the overreaction, and I'm going to call it that, it is an overreaction. From the minute this thing started, and I don't want to put us up on some sort of level here, but from the minute this thing started, you and I were both saying this is not as big a deal as other people are making it, and then we became, you and I were astonished.
We were.
Going back to the beginning of this, at the level to which it blew up, and how the league has now allowed this to become the biggest story in the world, surrounding their biggest and perhaps most beloved star. I understand the way the fans would feel, because I guess I would sum up my feelings on the subject by saying this. Do I think that he clearly was involved in this? Yes, I do.
Knew what was happening.
Well, I mean, beyond knew what was happening. He had a way he liked the football. They worked it out amongst themselves, and they did it.
He ordered the code red.
Do I think that he thought, as you would have said once during your career, it isn't really that big a deal?
Right.
That's, I think, what he honestly would have said to you before this whole thing began.
Yep.
And do I think that he deserves some sort of punishment for breaking the rules? Yes. Do I think that it is that at the end of the day, all of this is worthy of the level to which it has risen?
Absolutely not.
Or this 4-game suspension, 8-game suspension conversation? Just my opinion. Absolutely not.
I couldn't agree with you more. And a lot of it is, again, who it is and what team it is, and the history of that team. As we talked about, if it was a 2-14 team with a quarterback who was a middle-of-the-road quarterback, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. Wouldn't be having this discussion at all. But that's how it works with the bigger stars. We have the bigger discussions. We agree. I think it's blown a bit out of proportion. Is the integrity of the game involved for people like, and he'll join us at 8:30 Eastern, Bill Polian, and there are those around the league that think it is a big deal and needs to be hammered out because it is the integrity of the game. I understand their position of it, but I also understand guys on the field who have been trying to get away with things for decades that they know are wrong, but they're trying to gain themselves a little bit of an advantage, and then they just move on.
A friend of mine down in Miami sent me a note on this, and I think it's interesting. I think it does a good job of summing up what you were trying to say yesterday, which is, he says, I can't remember ever an equipment violation suspension in any sport turning into a suspension. Excuse me, an equipment violation turning into a suspension. And now you've got media heads screaming from 4 to 8 games, and he writes to me, the rumor is the NFL is considering a full year. And I did see that in certain places yesterday.
Wow.
He writes, in the past, you've had pitchers doctoring baseballs, players bending hockey sticks past the allowed curvature, goalie pads wider than the allowed width, greased linemen, stick 'em, a million examples of athletes violating and never being suspended at all. I believe the media has whipped this into a much bigger issue than it merits, and Goodell will never suspend less than the public and media outcry after the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Listen, and I don't know if that part of it is accurate or not, but it certainly is worth considering.
I'm telling you, I agree on the equipment things, because as I've seen it happen, what happens is just kind of, if you know the guy, you see the guy, whoever did something and they got caught, there's just kind of a little smirk. Yeah, you got caught. Go change your jersey. Go take those gloves off. Gave it a shot. Hey, good effort, but it didn't work. That's kind of been the mentality, however you want to think of that. If you want to think there's a lot of cheaters out there, then so be it, if that's what you want. But there are guys that will use the word gamesmanship instead of cheating, trying to get an edge instead of cheating. But, at the end of the day, it's breaking the rules. And a lot of us did it in a small way, we thought, to try and gain an advantage. You tried to get away with it. If you didn't, different than, I'm trying to get away with this Winstrol in my veins, in my bloodstream, and I got caught. It's a different thing we're talking about. We're talking about little advantages that are rule-breaking, but as players, we didn't think a lot of it. We just said, you gave it a shot, didn't work, oh, well. Good effort.
To make it clear, I'm not suggesting it's right. I'm not suggesting they shouldn't do something about it.
But I think
Armando Salguero cites a source as saying the NFL is, quote, weighing a suspension for Brady that could span up to 1 season. End quote. The source says it would, quote, be wrong to think a season-long suspension will absolutely be the punishment doled out because that decision had not been finalized. So he's softening the notion that a year-long suspension is a lock. When I first walked in the door yesterday morning, I didn't think he was going to get suspended for a game.
I thought
now they're talking about a season.
Yeah, I thought one game tops in this thing. And, maybe there's a side of the league that says, as we talk about all these things that could go on the field, for them to their thought process, do we need to lay the hammer down here because it's obviously big news? They helped it be big news as well with the way that this thing stretched out. But do we need to drop the hammer to just kind of let everybody know? You know what? Stop altering things for that little advantage because you're going to get hammered for it.
Bob Glauber in Newsday writes that the league needs to send a strong message with a meaningful sentence, a minimum 6 games. Leo Roth in Rochester writes Brady deserves 4-game suspension. Ian O'Connor, ESPN New York, Brady deserves to be suspended and 4 games sounds about right. USA Today, Chris Chase, Brady should and will get suspended, probably 2 to 4 games. John Harper in the Daily News says Brady needs to be suspended at least 2 games. It goes on and
on. It just blows my mind that if this was some other quarterback on some other team, would we even be getting these comments at all? I mean, but this is the day and age we live in. The stars, they get the notoriety, both good, maybe over the top, and bad, maybe over the top. And in this one, if you're talking about a 4, 8, or year-long suspension, from my opinion, and I think I can speak for Greeny on this, that's way over the top.
All right, we're Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Our Michelle Steele was there last night in Salem to hear Brady and to gauge as much of the reaction as she could. She will join us live in about 15 minutes on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, and she'll give us the insight on what was going on there. And again, we'll have Jim Gray later this morning as well. Jim Gray in our 9 o'clock hour Eastern time, 8 o'clock Central, with his thoughts not only on his sit-down with Brady yesterday, he also sat down with Floyd Mayweather, and that was the interview that will air on Showtime in which Mayweather says he's changed his mind and he no longer wants to fight Pacquiao again. Now, that will go back and forth about 50 times over the course of the next year. One way or another, Jim has been busy. We'll talk to him in exactly 1 minute. It was a milestone last night. What does it mean? I suppose that's in the eye of the beholder. You'll find out in 60 seconds after this word from AutoZone, Mike, where the experts are there to help no matter what you need to get you and your car back in the zone. And we are thrilled to partner with AutoZone to get you where you want to go, which is to the ESPYs this July.
Yep, it's the Mike and Mike Experience Sweepstakes at the ESPYs, presented by AutoZone. We're going to personally hook up 4 winners and their guests with a Gold at Greeny themed 4-day, 3-night romp through L.A. Starts with a welcome reception at one of the hottest L.A. restaurants out there. So you're going to get great meals, spa visits, tour of ESPN L.A. studios, and then on that big day, you got pre-parties to go to. You got the red carpet to walk where you are rubbing elbows with all the biggies there. You are one of them. And then the after party, the ESPN after party as well. Make sure you listen and watch us through May 15th. Get all the details at espnradio.com/Mike's SB contest. AutoZone, it's called The Zone, will help get you there.
High fly ball, deep left center. There it goes. See ya! Home run number 661 for Alex Rodriguez. That breaks the tie with Willie Mays, and it breaks the tie with the Orioles as the Yankees lead 3-2. Alex now stands alone in 4th place on baseball's all-time home run list.
It's our friend Michael Kay with a call last night on the Yes Network. Alex Rodriguez gets a curtain call 1 month and 1 day into the 2015 baseball season as he hits the home run that moves him past Willie Mays on the all-time list. You heard Michael run it down for you there. So it's Barry Bonds, it's Hank Aaron, it's Babe Ruth, and now it is Alex Rodriguez on baseball's all-time home run list.
Really something. Hey, think about it. He missed all last year. Remember 2013, he missed a lot of time with a hip injury, but he came back for the last month and a half of the season. He had 7 home runs there. So he was knocking it out of the park then and kind of took the year off, and now has kind of continued that way as well. Got a curtain call, as I heard him say after, looked at Girardi. Girardi gave him the nod, go ahead, do the quick curtain call, and he goes out and he gets it. I mean, this, as we said, time will heal wounds. You know what else heals wounds? Good play. Good play.
He's playing great.
And helping your team win helps heal the wounds as well. He's hitting .245. His average isn't the greatest in the world. 7 home runs, 18 RBIs. He's got 6 doubles as well. Remember, his last double, he passed Willie Mays on that for the all-time list. So he is definitely playing well.
Look, if someone told you that he was going to hit home runs and hit with power this season, and his average was going to be 250 something.
Yeah,
I think you would have signed
take
for
it,
that based
without
upon what
question.
we were talking about. I mean, I think
what did you say?
over-under
Did you
was
say 19.5? Is that? I know there was one, but we kind of had our own, and I think you might have thrown at me 19.5, and I know I said over, but I think that was kind of the number.
And I think I would have bet the under.
Yeah.
And look, he still has a long way to go to stay healthy all season long.
Right.
But if he does stay healthy all season long, he's going to obliterate that.
Yep.
So what can you say? I think relative to what my expectation, and I think what most expectations were of A-Rod's season, he has been much better than expected.
Yep.
He's been a big part of the reason why the Yankees are playing well. I mean, the Yankees lead their division by 3 games right now.
Yes, they do.
They go on to win the game last night by 1 run. They don't have a whole lot of offense. So he's been an important part, and that is a huge part of the reason why the fans are giving him a standing ovation.
And also, I think, because he's handling everything well to the media and to the public. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, I think he's handling it well. And on the other side of it, no matter your thought of this, the Yankees are looked at as not acknowledging any of this. And we obviously all understand why they're not doing it, because they don't want to pay him the $6 million for the milestones, and that's going to be the battle. But it just seems odd when you look at the milestone sheet handed out every night that this player is 3 games away from whatever, or this guy's 2 hits away from whatever. There's this guy's 1 home run away from sole possession of 4th place all time. But I get why they're not doing it, because there's that side of it as well. And whatever side you fall on, you fall on. I personally think he's going to get his money. I think the Yankees are going to lose this one. But Alex, from the media standpoint and from the public standpoint, he seems to be handling. He's kind of speaking when spoken to, and other than that, just playing ball.
That's the best. He said it in that lengthy piece that he did right before the season began, or the one that came out right before the season began. And so there's nothing left for me to say.
Right.
I just got to shut up and play. And for the most part, that's what he's done. By the way, he is now 5th on the all-time RBI list. Mm-hmm. He was 5th on the all-time RBI list. He is going to be 2nd on the all-time RBI list real soon.
Oh, yeah.
He has 1,987. He is 5 behind Babe Ruth, 6 behind Lou Gehrig, and 9 away from Barry Bonds.
Oh, wow, okay.
So in the next couple of weeks, he will be 2nd behind only Hank Aaron. Hank Aaron is the only man in baseball history with 2,000 RBIs. Now, he's at almost 2,300.
Right.
But the second on the list is Barry Bonds at 1996, Lou Gehrig 1993, Babe Ruth 1992, and A-Rod 1987. So he is going to be 2nd on the all-time RBIs list within, by the end of the month, if everything goes well.
It's just amazing where baseball is headed if it keeps this way, that some of the greats of all time, like a Barry Bonds, like a Roger Clemens, like an A-Rod, that aren't going to get voted into the Hall of Fame, at least not anytime soon. This one quick note about Willie Mays. It's the first time Willie Mays is not among the top 4 all-time home runs since the morning of April 24th, 1966. At that time, the top 4 were Babe Ruth. Go ahead.
At that time, the top 4 would have been, this is 66?
This is 1966.
Jimmy Fox?
Babe Ruth, number 1 at 714. Jimmy Fox, 534, number 2.
Ted Williams?
Number 3 at 521.
I don't think Aaron would have been there yet.
No. Tough one. Mel Ott.
Okay.
Mel Ott at 5'11", and then obviously Willie Mays jumped into that list and had been on it until last night.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
Guys, when you buy your clothes at DXL, you look good. But you feel like a rock star. So if you want to look and feel like you'll find all the brands you love, waist size 38 and up, all in one awesome store. DXL, you're looking good. Right now, select dress shirts are just $49.50 each when you buy 2 or more.
The best of Mike and Mike.
We got a lot of fighting going on today. It's been a long week. My voice is tired, if you can hear it. So I hope you can hear me as I talk. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. So we got fight stuff, right? The week started with the fight with Mayweather and Pacquiao.
Yep.
It moved on to this fight between basically Patriot Nation and everybody else, including Patriot Ray, our producer over there. Little sawed-off Patriot fan that he is.
Yeah.
And he's all yelling in my ear. I can't even do a show because every time we're talking, he's actually having an argument with me. But You can hear it. You can hear him off mic there. He thinks that Brady is a hero. And now we got you picking on poor Buster Olney for no obvious reason. All Buster is doing, which is what he always does, which is helping the show.
I didn't pick on him. I tweaked his email to, he said milestone numbers. I gave those same numbers out there and say, which would you rather be associated with? That's all.
That's not what that's not the part.
Oh, you mean when I said if he got mad at me and punched me, you know where he'd hit me?
Yeah.
Oh, that's just a fact.
Well, that's not nice. Let's bring in Robert Stanberry Olney III, our baseball insider and the host of the Baseball Tonight podcast on ESPNradio.com and on iTunes. Buster, you're not going to put up with this, are you?
Yes. Golick, how much did you weigh at the most in your career?
While I was playing, I was just probably a tick under 300 pounds.
Right, so you're about twice as big as I am, and I've learned this at an early age, and Greeny, I know you did too. A man's got to know his limitations, okay? I just move along. He humiliates me, insults me, and I just move along.
It's wise. I think it's wise.
And I do it in a loving way, though, Buster.
Yeah, you humiliate me, and there's nothing I can do but sit there and take it.
Listen, I'm truly mean to Jason Sark, who truly is snide and mean.
And
I completely understand that and endorse that approach with Jason.
And let me further, Buster, I'll take up your cause, because Golick says he was a tick under 300 when he played. He was 313 pounds while hosting this show, and I can prove it. We weighed you.
I know, but Buster said when my playing days, so I didn't feel the need to bring up my balloon days, okay? Mm-hmm. I brought up my playing days.
Yes, because you sort of, we fattened you up like a Christmas goose.
Yeah.
All right, quick, Buster. So, the question that Golick for some reason turned into like a debate is whether 661, which A-Rod hits last night, is actually going to be the most significant number that he achieves this season.
Well, yeah, in all honesty, he brings up a good point in terms of, which is more revered. Do you want the home runs or do you want the hits or do you want the RBI? I think it just comes down to, what are, for casual fans, considered to be magic numbers. I don't think there are a lot of fans who wake up saying, boy, 661. They do react that way to 3,000 hits, and they would react that way to 2,000 RBI. And by the way, Major League Baseball is going to react that way. They did not put in specially marked balls for home runs 660 and 661, but they're expected to for career hit number 3,000 and career RBI number 2,000. I know, Greeny, as I say this is grating on you that I don't put in the S on RBI.
No, because RBI is its own word. I was going to let that go because I have an actual question on this, which is there any the whole dispute between the Yankees and A-Rod involving the home run bonus? Did that in any way play into baseball's decision not to make specially marked balls, not to make a bigger deal of this milestone than they did?
What I have heard is that baseball puts these balls in for big numbers, and 3,000 certainly is that. 2,000 RBI is going to be that, and for record-setting numbers. But I think your question is an interesting one. And who knows? We do know that if, in fact, the Yankees wind up in a situation where they're in arbitration with Alex Rodriguez, their partner will be Major League Baseball. So I do think it's a fair question, and only they know for sure.
I guess along those lines, 661, I'm with you. Not the number itself doesn't do a whole lot. What about 700? You think 700 gets the love of 3,000 hits, 2,000 RBIs because of the 7?
I think it probably, again, because it's a big number. What I've heard is that essentially when you move up the ladder, like for example last year as Derek Jeter was passing all these players on the all-time hits list, they didn't put specially marked balls in as he passed other guys, and so I do think there's probably more of a chance for 700 than 661.
Mike and Mike, Buster Olney is with us. Quickly, while I have you, Buster. There's a lot of things about Rob Manfred, and very early in his tenure as commissioner, that I like, and one of them seems to be his open-mindedness to a lot of different ideas, and he has put 154 games squarely in the middle of the conversation again, the possibility of shortening the season. Now, I made a little note to myself when I saw that story come across the other day. It's a great idea, and it'll never happen, because I just can't believe when push comes to shove, they're going to give up 8 games worth of revenue. They'll figure out some way not to do that. What do you think are the realistic possibilities they will shorten the baseball season.
The fact that he was willing to talk about it the way that he did the other day tells you it's something that they will seriously look at. And look, yes, revenue is definitely part of the conversation, and it's probably part of a larger conversation with the union, which has been upset with the fact that their percentage of the money pie has shrunk, and maybe this is something that gets traded off for that. But keep in mind that within baseball, there's a perception among, evaluators, people who work for teams, that because amphetamines were taken out of the game, the schedule has become much more difficult for the players. And I think they're open to that. And keep in mind that a lot of the pushback against reducing the schedule from 162 to 154 would be, the numbers, what happens with the statistics and the records and things like that. Those kind of all got blown out or mitigated, I think, by the steroid era. They're not as important as they used to be because we don't know what all the numbers exactly mean anymore. So I don't think that's as much of an issue. But the fact that Rob talked about it, I think means that we should all be watching this very seriously, and that it's a distinct possibility this could happen if there's horse trading done in the right way.
Well, talking of milestones and big moments, and another thing Rob Manfred talked about, because he was asked it in a little over 2 months, we're all going to be hanging out in Cincinnati for baseball all-star time. Do you think at that time Pete Rose will be reinstated to baseball?
Well, in baseball, and Rob, every time he's asked about this, he essentially says that they haven't come to any final decision. I think they'll keep an open mind. My gut instinct is, based on what I've heard, and this is speculation on my part, is that they will not offer him full reinstatement. I think they should offer him very limited terms on a partial parole, but I don't even know if Pete Rose would be interested in that. Someone told me who knows him well, said, you know what, he's made a lot of money being the martyr in this situation, and I'm sure baseball would want him to adjust his off-field activities, in which he makes a lot of money.
It's Buster Olney on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, always there when we need him. And again, you can check out the Baseball Tonight podcast. It's available on ESPNRadio.com and on iTunes. Thank you, Robert.
See you guys.
See you,
I'll
Buster.
continue to defend your honor as Golick tries to just belittle you because of your lack of size.
I said wrong. I mean, what I said was factually correct, though.
It may have been, and yet it was a cheap shot and something that was beneath the dignity of a man of your size.
Exactly what would happen if he threw a straight jab.
You got to stop this. You got to stop this because you're making me laugh here, and it's hurting. All right, Twitter reaction all morning long to the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. Mother's Day is here. Send Mom the best. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN for special offers starting at just $29.99. Most of it is about Brady. Greg Smith, I'm so tired of athletes lying and then doubling down and attacking others. Tom equals Lance.
I don't know if Tom attacked anybody else. I mean, I know what you're saying. But you're talking about Lance Armstrong. You're talking about Ryan Braun. Those two definitely went on the A-Rod. They went on the offensive after other people. Tom hasn't done that. Now, if we all feel at the end of all this, Tom left these two guys kind of blowing in the wind, the opinion may lean that way, but he hasn't, like those guys, actively tried to roll over their lives, so I can't go that far.
For the record, he didn't sue them.
No.
He didn't basically, for lack of a better word, destroy their lives as Armstrong did to people. He didn't sue them as A-Rod did to people. He didn't publicly destroy their reputations as Ryan Braun did to the specimen collector.
So I'm really a little slow to want to put Tom's name in with those guys.
Anthony, Haloti Ngata was suspended 4 games for taking an Adderall pill. Why shouldn't Brady get at least the equivalent? We were having this conversation at my dinner table last night. It was my son Stevie, my wife Stacy, and me. And Stace brought up what you and I talked about yesterday, which is the optics of the way that domestic violence and other real world problems. Like I said earlier this morning, I want to make sure I'm clear on what I mean. Sometimes it's difficult because you know what you mean in your own head, and it doesn't always come out that way. So I want to make sure it's very clear what I'm saying. I'm not saying that what Brady did, let's just say for the sake of argument, Brady did it.
Right.
That he knew that he was breaking a rule, and yet he instructed these guys to do it, and he was gaining competitive advantage by doing it. At the end of the day, that isn't that big a deal. I mean, in the world, that's like nothing. Right? Mm-hmm. We've seen real problems in the National Football League, involving National Football League players over the course of the last 12 months or whatever it is. So this doesn't compare to those. But that doesn't mean, in my opinion, that the punishments involved have to reflect that. because I'll use Pete Rose as a perfect example. Pete Rose gambling on baseball is not the most serious actual crime. It isn't even actually a crime. It's against breaking a baseball rule.
Baseball rule, right.
But it is not the most serious violation of the human and moral and ethical code that has been committed by a baseball player. But within the framework of the sport,
it's the
worst thing you can do.
Exactly.
So no one would suggest that Tom Brady authorizing, instructing, or whatever word you want to insert, taking the air out of a football even remotely compares to some of the other things that we've seen involving football players. But that doesn't mean that the punishments have to reflect that, because it is, within the framework of the sport, a significant thing.
Completely agree. And the other thing we put into play is taking an Adderall pill. You know what the penalty is now. The NFL has put that in place. Where do you put this? How do you quantify this? What are you comparing it to? Are you comparing it to piping noise in a stadium? Are you comparing it to a GM texting and getting nailed for it? Are you comparing it to salary cap violations? Are you what can you be comparing it to that will give you, okay, this equals this many games? That's where I think they're at, because is there any precedent? Do we have a precedent for this?
I don't know about precedent. I do have, and I got to find it in here. It was in SI's piece. There actually is a specific penalty, and you're going to laugh when you hear what it is.
Okay.
For this. Hold on, let me find it for you. I'm sorry. It's going to take me a second for this thing to load. The computers are so slow.
No. While you're finding it, let me read this one from this gentleman who says, in court, this crime of Mr. Brady would be considered a low-level misdemeanor, first-time offender, usually a slap on the wrist. So here's the punishment. Suspended 1 game to be served in week 4. I believe that's their bye week.
That's their bye week.
1,000 seconds of community service and a $1 fine.
Do you know, by the way, what their 5th game is this year if he gets suspended 4 games?
I do not.
You know who they play in their 5th game this year? The Colts.
Oh.
Which would be ironic, because that's the team against whom this whole thing began.
Those footballs will be in Fort Knox.
I'll find it for you, because there is actually a specific penalty.
I was trying to give you time to find it
to a team. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were going to ask me that question right here.
Well, yeah, because that's what. Listen, if there is, I mean, it's a little easier for the league to come up with a number if you know what you're setting it based on. But I don't know if they have that. That I do not know. So. You know, all eyes and ears and everything. We're waiting again for the white smoke to come out of the NFL offices and Troy Vincent to set what discipline he's going to set.
The point is that a violation in the rule book, a violation of an equipment rule, the team is suspect is then open to being given a $25,000 fine.
Right,
$25,000.
So even though the team in this case was found to, Bill Belichick. And the Patriots were not found, to probably have known what was going on. There's still the thought process that it's the team, you oversee everything, that they're still going to get some kind of fine out of this thing. It's just
the point is that it's so extraordinarily minor. Right, you're talking about a $25,000 fine for the team. It's like nothing.
But it doesn't say anything to a player. If a player, I mean, listen, because unfortunately the things you're going to
Here it is. The question is, will Roger Goodell is authorized to impose a stiffer penalty than the one prescribed by the Game Operations Manual. Article 8.13 of the NFL's Constitution empowers Goodell to issue penalties for violations of rules that, quote, affect the competitive aspects of the game. It is possible Goodell could levy onto the Patriots a much higher fine, up to $500,000, says one source, because the Game Operations Manual dictates that a violation of the PSI rule triggers a $25,000 fine. $25,000.
So that's it.
It actually specifically says that.
A
violation of the PSI rule triggers a modest $25,000 fine.
But the commissioner can, if he feels that there was a competitive advantage gained or involved in that he can go more. See, you got to hate that. If I'm the commissioner, I hate that. I'd rather have a rule in place that says you do this, it costs you this. If it costs you not a lot, so more people do it, then we change it to make it cost you more. But to say here's the penalty, but then the commissioner can add more if he wants, I'd hate to be in that position.
And I think that if they set a precedent, if they suspend Brady for 8 games, which, again, would floor me. But if you read what people are writing, and they're not making these things up out of thin air, again, do I think it's possible that the people who will ultimately make this decision are sending different trial balloons out all over the place? Tell this guy it might be 8 games, tell that guy it might be 4 games, tell this guy it'll be no games, and let's see what the reactions are and try and gauge an appropriate reaction. And frankly, I wouldn't have a problem with that because, again, we're talking about nothing. We're talking about letting the air out of a football. So whatever they do is okay with me. But if they suspend him 8 games, then the next time a player puts Vaseline on his arms or whatever it is, do they have to suspend him?
Do they have to go 8 games? I mean,
whether it's 8 games or even suspend him 1 game, right now the penalty for that is wipe your arms off, buddy, and get out there.
Hey, good try.
Yeah.
Hey, fella, good try. Go in there and change that.
Or violations of uniform.
Or they get fined. These guys get fined $5,000 or $7,500 for those kinds of violations.
All right, we'll have to see. Mike and Mike, coming up in exactly 1 minute, you are going to hear, we have a feature called On the Hook. Someone, I believe, has put himself on the hook. Or at least many people are going to suggest he's put himself on the hook. In my opinion, he's done a very, very good job of accumulating talent for his team. You'll be the judge in 1 minute after a word from 1-800-Flowers.com. Guys, it is down to the nitty-gritty here, all right? Mother's Day is upon us. Today is your last chance to send all the moms in your life something special from 1-800-Flowers.com, the official florist of Mother's Day. You can still get it there in time for Mother's Day, but only if you order right now.
I'll tell you what, gang, you're walking a tightrope here with no net if you're waiting this long, but we are here to bail you out. 1-800-Flowers.com has this offer for our listeners and our viewers, $10 off this Mother's Day bestseller. It's handcrafted fresh roses, lilies, carnations, regularly $39.99, now just $29.99. Mom deserves the best, so make sure you're going to send her the best and save $10 along the way. Order now, though. Do not wait. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com from your desktop or your mobile device. Click on the radio microphone in the upper right corner and enter Mike. That's 1-800-Flowers.com, enter Mike, or call 1-800-Flowers and mention our first name.
Good little note here from Hembo. $25,000 fine is what it actually says in the league operations manual is the penalty for a PSI violation, a pounds per square inch, for basically for doing what the Patriots are accused of having done, although obviously this is different from that because the balls were weighed. They then allegedly, or according to the thing, they probably subsequently took air out of it, and I can see where that's considered more of a competitive violation. But just how insignificant is a $25,000 fine? Last year, Jimmy Graham was fined $30,000 for dunking a football through the goalpost in a preseason game.
Yep.
So, the actual penalty for doing what they did is less than what they fined Jimmy Graham for dunking the ball through the goalpost in a preseason game.
Yeah, somehow I don't think it'll be a $25,000 fine.
It's going to be less than that. All right, or more than that. On the Hook is brought to you by TakeMeFishing.org. Visit TakeMeFishing.org to plan your next outdoor adventure. We're asked every week by our friends at TakeMeFishing.org to pick someone who is on the hook. And I think on some level you could say Jerry Jones has put himself on the hook. They are now the team, the Dallas Cowboys, that have taken on a lot of people who have gotten a lot of attention for off-the-field situations. And this is significant in a lot of ways. One of them is that football is the one sport more than any other where people are notoriously afraid of anything that takes the attention away from the field. Now, a lot of the situations that are involved here, and this is after they signed La'el Collins yesterday, who was a first-round talent player, and the circumstances obviously went in a different direction. They draft Randy Gregory with the 60th pick in the draft. That's a guy who some say was a top 5, at worst a top 10 talent in this draft. So they have brought in, and of course, Greg Hardy, who belongs in a completely different discussion. But the reality is they have accumulated a bunch of talent and a bunch of off-the-field kind of questions that could go one of two ways. If everything goes well, I think you could say the Cowboys have fortified what was already a Super Bowl caliber team and made themselves much, much better. If things start to go sideways, obviously it brings a lot of questions.
As we said, when people get in trouble, they go through their suspension and then they're allowed to play again. Who wants to give them that opportunity? We should go all the way to a Josh Brent with the Cowboys, correct? You know, the unfortunate situation of getting an accident, his teammate being killed, went through obviously the legal system, the NFL system, and the Cowboys give him another shot. Rolando McClain, who they brought in, has had himself some issues, and now you have, like I said, they bring Greg Hardy, and that came huge headlines with what has gone on this year. Has a right to play in the NFL, but a lot of NFL teams would not even think about signing him. Randy Gregory dropping on so many boards, off some teams' boards, taken by the Dallas Cowboys. And then La'el Collins, really a situation where you can't put it in the Greg Hardy and Randy Gregory situation, I don't think. Obviously, it's around a unbelievably sad and horrible situation of his former girlfriend and unborn child being murdered. And the thought was, the bell's ringing when he has to leave the draft as the police want to talk to him. But a situation where it doesn't seem like he was involved at all. So now you look at what the Cowboys had, and at the end of the day, we talk about talent, how talent can outweigh everything else. And if the Cowboys go on and win a Super Bowl, get to a Super Bowl, that's going to outweigh everything else. As long as those guys fly somewhat right and don't get in any more trouble to where it becomes a headline again. We saw this with the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals bringing in player after player who had issues and getting a second or a third chance with the Bengals. And unfortunately for them, it didn't work out sometimes. They've gotten to the playoffs, but they haven't won. The Cowboys are looking to make that run, and they look to have one of their best teams in a while. But to have now 3 basically first-round picks, one in the first, one in the second, and then one not even drafted is just amazing.
And how about the bargain they got on Collins? He was ranked by McShay the 22nd best player in his draft. Last year, the 22nd player drafted was Johnny Manziel. He got $7.7 million guaranteed dollars. They get Collins for 3 years, $1.65 million guaranteed. They got 3 players who are in Todd McShay's top 40. The third ranked of the 3, Randy Gregory was ranked 18th, La'el Collins 22nd. The third ranked of the 3, Byron Jones, is the only one they drafted in the first round.
Yeah.
So they got really good players at extraordinary value.
This already was the best offensive line in the game. Understand where they could be, Greeny, because Collins can play guard or right tackle. He won't play left tackle. That's Tyron Smith, who, by the way, Tyron Smith, the left tackle, when he was at USC, when you're a player in a sport and somebody from that sport comes in for a high school visit and you show them around, Tyron Smith showed Collins around. He was his host when Collins visited USC. So here's what you have. Let's say he takes Doug Free's spot at right tackle. Doug Free is 31 years old. This is what you have from left to right. Tyron Smith, 24 years old. Ron Leary at left guard, 26. Travis Frederick, 24. Zach Martin, 24. La'el Collins, 22. That could possibly
and all of them ridiculously good.
That could possibly be, and basically 4, because Collins would have been a first-rounders, basically 4 first-rounders on that line. 1 you got for an unbelievable bargain of that 3-year deal, but it can be renegotiated after 2 years, so we'll see.
Mike and Mike.
ESPN Radio, bringing you directly to the biggest events in sports.
Center field, well hit, Hunter back, out of here!
From opening day of baseball,
Throw to the plate, safe at the plate!
right through the World Series.
For the 3rd time in 5 seasons, the San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
Whether it's LeBron, Chris Paul, or Kevin Durant, when the NBA tips off, ESPN Radio is right there when a champion is crowned.
We have a new world champion. The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
And when the magic of bowl season arrives, ESPN Radio is your home for the new college football playoff.
The college football playoff first national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
The biggest events in sports can be found right here on ESPN Radio. The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
Jim Gray, who joins us now on Mike and Mike on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Jim, good morning. How are you?
I'm great, Mike. And Mike, how are you guys?
We are well. So you've done a lot of very high-profile interviews. LeBron James, once upon a time. You did the Mayweather interview that I want to talk about with you in a minute, and many others. But very few of them, I would imagine, came in a setting such as this. Golick said it sounded like the presidential State of the Union, where Brady would speak and then everyone would stop and give him a standing ovation, and then he'd speak again. So just give us a sense of what it was like for you trying to ask the questions you had to ask in front of that crowd.
Well, Tom, I think, described it when he walked in as a Patriots pep rally, and it was pretty amazing. It was, he was obviously very popular in Boston, and it really was like a rock star type of treatment, and I could feel that the crowd really probably didn't want these questions to be asked. They were interested in hearing the answers, but they didn't want him pushed or pressed, and but they tolerated it.
Did you kind of know where he was going to go, or as he was going in his direction? I'm sure you probably expected that. What was your train of thought on follow-up questions?
Well, I wasn't sure where he was going to go because I didn't know how far he wanted to go. When he said he didn't want to get into it, I just kind of decided, let's beat around the bushes and go around the edges a little bit since he didn't want to get into the detail. If a guy doesn't want to go down that path and there are, 8,000 people there who are willing to go along with him and he doesn't want to go down that path, then you don't go down that path.
Do you have any chance to talk to him beforehand? Or we saw him getting out of the helicopter and all the rest of that. Did you have a chance to talk with him beforehand about what he was going to be willing to talk about and what he was going to shut down?
I talked to him beforehand, but I didn't, know exactly what he wanted to do. In terms of it, he said, go ahead and, ask what you want to ask. He didn't. He said he's probably not going to go down into too great a detail, but there was no problem asking what I wanted to ask. I did.
Was there anything in your interaction with him last night or anything that didn't wind up on the stage that you think people would be interested in? Did you get any other sense from him about where his head is right now, how this has affected him, anything like that?
Well, I think he said it, Mike. Obviously he wants to be liked, and it's something he's not used to. But I think this is a man that's very comfortable with himself and what's gone on here. I don't think that he thinks that he's done anything wrong. In fact, I know he doesn't think he's done anything wrong, and I don't think that the report indicates that. There's very little in the report about what he spoke to investigators about, which is interesting. So why they would spend all the time that they spent with him, a day plus, and not use any of it or feel that very little of that should make it into the report, I don't know. I haven't spoken to Mr. Wells or any of the investigators who put it together, but I think that he just basically feels that there was for whatever the reason, they didn't want to hear what he had to say in terms of it being pertinent to be put into this report that he feels should have come out. But I guess he will address that after the commissioner decides, or Troy Vincent, or whoever's going to make this decision on punishment.
By the way, Brady's agent said that vehemently in a statement yesterday, Don Yee, and Don Yee will join us coming up in about 15 minutes here on Mike and Mike.
So, Jim, it seemed like Brady, handled the questions well and worked them the way he kind of wanted to answer them. Were there any, in your mind, after a question, any uncomfortable moments where, you just saw maybe a slight bit of uncomfortable feeling by Brady through any of this?
I think the whole circumstance is uncomfortable, but in terms of his demeanor and his equilibrium and his comfort level last night, I did not detect that he was uncomfortable or unhappy or bothered by what was being asked.
Mike and Mike, Jim Gray is with us. So you had the interview with Brady last night. Mike, have anything else on that? You want to go to Mayweather? Okay, because the other interview that you have done, because we were reporting on what it was that Floyd had to say, but will air tomorrow night in its entirety on Showtime when they rebroadcast the fight from last week, is the one in which Floyd Mayweather tells you that he has changed his mind on a rematch. He no longer wants to fight Manny Pacquiao and calls him a sore loser and a coward. So take us through that. I'm fascinated by that, Jim. Boxing obviously is so different from the other sports. Just give us a little behind the scenes on that interview and the sort of the one-on-one nature that you had with Floyd that we'll see tomorrow night.
Floyd Mayweather really opened up in his canvas, and there's a lot more that he has to say in this that I guess Showtime will release later today or during the interview. Floyd Mayweather is upset. He was really toned down considerably during this entire promotion because he didn't feel that he had to pump the fight or sell the fight, that it sold itself. The people really wanted to see this fight after so long of being deprived by the two combatants the ability to have this fight. So now he feels as though Manny Pacquiao is really, he says he's a coward. He says he will not do business again. These are bad people to do business with, that they're not giving him the credit, and he's not buying into it. He's not getting his just due. that they waited so long for this fight and that he dominated him. And he probably said 20 times, Manny Pacquiao is not on my level. He never was on my level. And now that he's been whipped, he decided that his shoulder, he said, the guy raised his arms at the weigh-in. If you have a torn rotator cuff, you can't raise your arms. He fought the entire night. There was not any detection by Floyd, he said, of any problem. And then he said at the end of the fight, he walked around the ring with his arms up. He said, you tell me, I've had a torn rotator cuff, he said. You tell me, at what time can you raise your arm? You can't put it up out past the sling, let alone all this. So he's not buying into it, and he thinks that it's really clever, the term that he uses, I can't use on the radio here this morning, but past poor sportsmanship. And, he's really upset with Pacquiao, who he hadn't been upset with up until now.
Well, I know I can totally refute that. I've had torn rotator cuff, and I played games with it, not only raised my hand. I'm not going to say it didn't hurt, but you can certainly function with a torn rotator cuff. It depends on how much it's torn. That said, his answers, Mayweather's answers, how much, because it is a sport of promotion to try and get to that next fight or to keep your name out there, do his answers at all, Jim, at times seem calculated to that, to set up the next big moment for Mayweather?
No, there was everything. No, I don't. Not at all, Mike. Look, so expose what went on between those two and between Bob Arum and Mayweather Promotions and Leonard Ellerbe and Al Heyman and HBO and Showtime. These folks were arguing, nitpicking, and downright, tooth and nail on every single detail of this fight. The fact that these two guys got in the ring and fought each other, really, it is a miracle. And to say that this could happen again, we never want to say never, but I would say the chances of that are way less than zero, whatever that numerical circumstance would be. It's just not going to happen. And now, Floyd is look, when Floyd gets something in his head, you can pretty well take it to the bank. He does contradict himself like he admits. He does change his mind like he admits. But he is hot right now. And if it was a 60-40 split now, it would be a 90-10 split going forward. And Pacquiao would never, ever agree to it. And Floyd would never, ever agree to do business again with Bob Arum. So I just don't, this is just not going to be possible. And, no, I take Floyd, I take Floyd 100% at his word in this instance. I just think he's being denied the ability to have in his head that Manny feels that he lost to him. And it's really not well thought out by Manny what he's doing.
Again,
look, the idea that he had a torn rotator cuff and wouldn't postpone the fight simply suggests that he's getting into the ring to take the check.
Yeah. That part I totally agree with. I said it myself.
I do as well. Something I think 90% of the people would do, quite honestly.
You might, but if you're the other guy and you're not getting your due now because he's basically saying, well, you know what, I could have beat him, but my shoulder hurt. You can't have it both ways.
Why would you ever expose it, guys? If that's the case and you're not trying to win, why would you ever expose it? Why wouldn't you just say, Floyd had a better night, he's a better fighter tonight, thank you, good night?
Yeah. Listen, I agree. I'm not saying anybody handled it well, but rarely do boxers handle things like that too well, quite honestly.
So, Jim, it's been an interesting week.
I find absolutely zero fault with anything that Floyd has done here. Zero. He came to fight. He was ready to fight, and he won the fight.
I don't either.
His reaction tonight, he's certainly entitled to
it. We completely agree. Anything in the ring, there's no issue with Floyd Mayweather. Though let's also understand the fact that within the course of 5 days, he said, I'll give him a rematch, and then I won't give him a rematch. So, I mean...
But he didn't, but this was before, this was well before, he said that in a text, I believe, within the first 24 hours to Stephen A. I believe.
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember exactly whether that was before or after the shoulder injury, but either way, it's Inside Mayweather versus Pacquiao. The epilogue, it's tomorrow night, 9 Eastern on Showtime, and it will include Jim Gray's sit-down with Floyd Mayweather. And again, Jim telling you he is as certain as he can be this fight will not happen again.
Wow, that'd be something.
Been an interesting week, Jim. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
The best of Mike and Mike.
At the center of the news with all of this stuff surrounding Tom Brady and the investigation of the Patriots, it's our pleasure to welcome on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, Tom Brady's agent, Don Yee, is with us on Mike and Mike. Don, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you guys for having me on.
It is our pleasure. Hey, let's jump right into it. The most interesting thing from your statement, which we read in its entirety yesterday, was when you said, quote, "I was physically present for my client's interview. I have verbatim notes of the interview. Tom made himself available for nearly an entire day and patiently answered every question. It was clear to me the investigators had limited understanding of professional football. For reasons unknown, the Wells report omitted nearly all of Tom's testimony, most of which was critical because it would have provided this report with the context that it lacks." So, Don, very simply, what did Tom Brady tell the Wells report investigators that didn't make it into the report?
Well, I know that obviously we don't have enough airtime to get into the depth of Tom's testimony, but Tom was, giving explanations as to his actions and actually providing a tremendous amount of context about what happens in a locker room and pregame preparation and things such as of that nature. And a lot of that just simply didn't make it in the report. And if it would have made it in the report, I think it would have given readers of the report a clearer understanding of the mindsets of the participants.
Don, what was the reason that Tom Brady would not give his phone to the investigators to look at any conversation between the other two and Tom?
Well, there are a lot of nuanced reasons that I don't really want to get into here, because once we go down that road, we'll probably eat up the rest of your show. But I can tell you this, that, when Tom was in the interview, as I said, it was nearly one entire day. The investigators, there were 4 attorneys there, they confronted him with the texts from the equipment staffers, as well as asked him about his own phone. And so they went through that very thoroughly in person. They were able to observe his body language. And so I feel that we completely cooperated with the investigation from that standpoint.
What is the context, Don? You're talking about what he would have provided, or what he did provide in the area of what goes on before a game. What essentially is the message Tom is delivering, or delivered, or tried to deliver to the investigators about what actually happened before the game with the footballs?
Well, one example would be in terms of a quarterback's pregame preparation before a game of particularly that magnitude. And I'm glad I'm on the phone with Mike Golick, a former player. There's a lot of commotion, actually, and particularly for a quarterback. There are a lot of different things pulling at them as they try to get ready. And in terms of the checking the ball process and what feels good to him and proving the balls and all of that, I was not really convinced that the investigators really understood that what Tom was trying to describe as to the feel that he liked, and that it really was not a very scientific process for him. And I think that they were left with the impression that, he's no different than maybe a concert level cellist who knows exactly how the strings must be tuned on their instrument. But those are really actually 2 very, very different things. A cellist isn't preparing to get hit by 300-pound linemen in about an hour.
But also, this is about not only preparation before the game, which I understand, but getting the footballs ready is during the week, and having a relationship with those who get the footballs ready and how a quarterback likes them. So doesn't that seem it's less about right before the game than more about during the week and the preparation of the footballs?
I really don't know what they were trying to get it at in terms of what was more important to them in the particular time period, Mike. But, all I can tell you is just trying to give you one example of the context his testimony provided that didn't really make it fully into the report. Another example would be the report kind of highlighted the fact that Tom had autographed items of memorabilia for staffers, and I think they tried to give the impression that there was a quid pro quo between what might have happened with the footballs and the fact that Tom was providing these autographs. And Tom patiently explained that he gets a tremendous amount of requests for autographs. Things are piled up in front of his locker, and he's a generous guy, and this is what he regularly does for people.
Mike Don Yee, Tom Brady's agent, is with us. Because we've really only heard from Tom in that press conference initially after this story broke, and last night at his appearance with Jim Gray, he really didn't get into any detail at all. Let's just clarify, Don. It is Tom's position that he did not knowingly do anything that would violate a rule. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I think the report clearly states that Tom, gave the direction that, look, I like the balls at 12.5. The report indicated that he was upset after one of the Jets games during the season because the ball felt rock hard to him. The report clearly stated that they went and looked and double-checked the rule book to determine what was the permissible limits, and that's what he wanted it at.
And so, to Tom's knowledge, no one took any air out of the football after the time that they were weighed by the officials?
No.
Okay. One of the others, right in the top part of your statement, I wanted to go over. You took some criticism from some former players, including myself, when your statement was, one item alone taints this entire report. What does it say about the league's office's protocols and ethics when it allows one team to tip off an issue prior to a championship game and no league officials or game officials notified the Patriots of the same issue? This suggests it may be more probable than not that the league cooperated with the Colts in perpetrating a sting operation. And Don, from our standpoint as players, this happens all the time, is one team will tell, or officials from a team will tell the officials, hey, we'll have this alignment, or we may do this thing, or we may have this alignment, or watch that center the way he bobs his head, or watch the quarterback the way he calls the count, or watch this guy, he does this particular thing. And the refs have no obligation, or NFL officials, no obligation to go tell the other team what one team is saying. So from that standpoint, I don't understand.
And that's a great point, Mike. And I actually agree with your point, but your point is not mutually exclusive to my point. I probably should have stated it more clearly. What I was trying to state was, when I was discussing the officials, it was not just the game officials, but it was also league-level officials, executives from Park Avenue. So you have a pregame communication, and we're not talking, what you're describing is you're on the field getting ready for a game, and you're going up to the official saying, look for this. What I'm talking about is a day before the game. Players are not even on the field. An executive from the Colts organization communicates with the league at a high level. Then they go and communicate and collaborate amongst themselves and have discussions. Then they have discussions with the game officials on game day. And at that point, I think it's a situation akin to a basketball referee calling two head coaches together on the sideline just before tip-off and saying, guys, we're going to call it tight tonight.
And so, okay, Mike, if I got you.
And on page 46 of the report, it's, there's a footnote in there where the Wells report itself brings up this sting issue. All it says is they determine that there was no sting. They don't go into whether they cross-examine any of the league officials. There's no other further elaboration.
I guess the question, Don, that a lot of people would have is, if you're suggesting the league was looking to take down Tom Brady, many people would ask why. He's like the most popular player in the entire league. Why would the league be looking to sting Tom Brady or the Patriots?
Well, I think they're obviously, according to the report again, and this is not coming from me, I just read the report just like you guys. The report stated that when Ryan Grigson contacted the league office, and again, I think this was also in another footnote, and I don't know if the investigative team followed up on this, but Grigson stated that there was, quote unquote, a lot of chatter around the league, or that it was generally known that this might have been going on. And so I have no reason, I don't know why the league would do this, frankly, in this particular manner. It seems to me that the sporting result would have been to simply approach Bill Belichick or Patriots ownership prior to kickoff and say, look, this is what's going on. This is what we're hearing. We're going to double check all the footballs, make sure that the contest we put on tonight is completely equitable and fair.
Don, a couple of ones to end up. Do you think Tom Brady is being held to a different standard because of his status and who he plays for?
Yes. And one thing I also want to make clear, just so that everybody kind of understands the context of the report, and that's really all I'm trying to do, is get the people to really read this report closely. Understand that this was not a legal proceeding.
It was an investigator hired by the league to serve as a prosecutor, a judge, and a jury. The Patriots attorneys, nor myself, none of us had the ability, as in a legal proceeding, to cross-examine any of the league's witnesses. No ability to do that. No ability to view the league's evidence prior to appearing for the interview. So when we appeared for the interview, we didn't know what to expect, really. And Tom sat there, answered all the questions. I didn't object to a single question during the entire interview. And so we feel we cooperated fully.
And Don, to finish up, no matter what the punishment, whether it's just a fine or whether it's a suspension, will Tom Brady appeal anything?
I don't really want to get into that, Mike, because that's, I'd be delving into speculation. I'll leave you with this. A lot of people already are assuming there's going to be some punishment. I want to go back to the report again. The report stated that it was more probable than not. Okay, when a lawyer writes that, they're basically saying that it's 50.1% versus 49.9%, essentially a coin flip. The report could have stated, we have absolute certainty these things happen. The report didn't state that. It could have stated, we have virtual certainty these things happen. It didn't state that. It could have stated, we have substantial certainty these things happened. It didn't state that. So it really went to the lowest threshold it could possibly go. And so I'd be just interested to see, what the league does, because the league's not obligated to follow the findings here. The league could decide that, well, with the 50.1% versus 49.9%, we don't think that there's enough here after a 3.5-month investigation, millions of dollars spent. We just don't think that there's enough here for a maybe.
It'll be very interesting to see, and Don, on that, I think we totally all agree. We thank you very much for the time today, and I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. Thanks, Don.
Thanks, Don.
And thank you very much for the chance.
This has been the Best of Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio Pod Center. To hear more from Mike and Mike, log on to ESPNradio.com and become an ESPN Radio Insider.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Isn't this weather great, Golick?
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've had a day like this.
Oh, and we're doing it upright. Some Johnsonville brats on the grill, a cold drink in our hands, feet kicked up. This is how to live.
Yeah, can you imagine all those people who have to be inside working on a day like this?
Yeah, those poor people.
Oh, I'm just so glad you found those guys to fill in and take our place on the show today.
Wait, what? I thought you were going to get the guest host for today.
No, Greenie. I said I was going to get some root beer floats.
Well, then who's doing our show right now?
Well, that's not good. We better get back to the studio.
But Golick, the brats are ready.
Oh, man, Johnsonville brats, all that full, juicy flavor that comes from only premium cuts of pork. We could probably enjoy a couple of these before we head back, right?
I don't see why not. That static seems to be doing okay, and it's certainly not going anywhere.
Then neither are we. Pass me one of those Johnsonville brats.
Johnsonville, served with pride since 1945. Find delicious recipes for the grill at johnsonville.com.
Two of baseball's best go head-to-head in interleague action when the Tigers head to St. Louis to face the Cardinals. The pregame at 7 Eastern, first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN and ESPN Radio.